You're such an asshole.
A long time ago in a land far, far away, there was a guy named Cappy, but he was just a mere lieutenant at the time. And he was happy because he finally unlocked the secrets of the universe on how to not have a real job. And then a dick named Rob. Oh, keep me now. Oh, no one's going to know who you are. Sent me real work. And Cappy had to dust off his old economic skills and look things up. Here's something I thought would be a good conversation for everyone considering our current economic state. So please make a video. I know from your previous videos, you advise people to use robo-advisors, index funds versus actively managed for investing. So let's talk about this for anybody who's new or not familiar. There's index investing where you just throw your money into the S&P 500 index, or would be akin to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You don't think about it. It's like this automatic diversified portfolio versus an actively managed fund, mutual fund, where there's a person and analysts and marketers and HR directors and people named Karen who are all trying to find a way to find the best stocks to create their own mutual fund, their own portfolio of stocks that then beats the S&P 500 index. And because there's so many more people involved, they have higher expenses in managing those funds. And so you pay a higher fee. But the theory is that you would get a higher rate of return, which in historical perspective of the performance of the stock market is not true. About last I checked, it was around 85% of actively managed funds. You know, the ones that are supposed to beat the index don't. Because, dude, bro, I majored in business over at the Harvard school, and like I totally got promoted into whatever the bulge bracket, whatever remains of it after the great culling in 2009. And they get promoted based on the cut of their jib or who's their daddy, and is your last name Sachs and is your first name Goldman. And wow, they got spanked again in the Asian currency crisis, the .com bubble, and then the housing bubble. Who knows? So anyway, the trend has been now to say, forget those guys. For a fraction of the managerial costs, you can invest in the index, beat 85% of the dude bro finance wizards. You literally, I could get my mom, who has not a financial or mathematical cell in her body. She can beat your Wall Street wizards by just investing in the S&P 500. So this has kind of gutted the 1980s Wall Street dude, bro. I'm making business with their poofy hair and Michael Douglas movies. Wasn't there another one with Pretty Boy Floyd? What's his name? Leonardo DiCaprio, whatever. Hang on, let me give it the coffee. I had to do work this morning. So now what has occurred is in the past, more and more people have been investing in the index as the word has got out that you don't need financial planners, financial advisors, or anyone with a business degree. Also, the sexiness has moved from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. And they're like, but what about us, dude, bro? Wall Street, remember when we were popular? And no one cares anymore about them. However, in flooding the market blindly with funds that go into index funds, and then therefore the underlying stocks that make up an S&P 500 or a Wilshire 5000 or a FTSE 100, that would be for you Brits, does that not then cause a bubble? And so that's the main concern in some articles and people have interviewed about and stuff like that. I've personally liked using index funds for investing. They work fine for me. However, things like my thrift saving program, the military version of the IRA, which is actively managed, has also done well. However, as of 2019, I started to hear the dangers of index funds and robo-advisors from such economists and traders like Michael Burry, who, by the way, was he was portrayed by Christian Bale in The Big Short, which is a good movie. Jim Rickards, Daniel DeMartino, Booth, and others. The main argument against index funds is that so much money is moving into index fund that's creating a bubble that removes price discovery, among other things. So please name your price and share your thoughts about this. For reference, here's some things and articles and stuff like that. And so I did that. So then Mean Rob made the great and lazy Cappy have to do research. And it was so funny because I was like, stupid guy, go to the internet and Google things. I remember in the olden days having to go and pull microfiche and write numbers down and then throw them into an Excel spreadsheet. I remember using Bloomberg terminals thinking that was the cat's meow, and it was back in the day. Like, I remember you could pull the S&P 500 index data going back 20-some years. And I pulled that from the Bloomberg terminal because I had access to Bloomberg terminal when I was interning. People thought I was God. Talent on loan from God, the Lord. And Cappy came down from the Bloomberg mountain, and I give you forth the S&P 500 PE index. Amen. But now it's he's just a stupid idiot making me spend 5 minutes searching stuff. So I did my research, and I got the opinions of a couple other guys, and I do want to give them a mention. Where are they? It was like the Flying Bagel. What was it? Ben Felix and the Plain Bagel. These guys did 2 very good videos. I'll put the links down in the chat room below, maybe. But look them up. And so they talked about it. And so, but then I did my other research because I have my own techniques and tactics. And so here are the result of my findings. All right. They say, and by they, I mean the person that your wife quote, well, they say that cholesterol is like totally overinflated and you should totally risk your heart on it. Well, they say. So they say in this case is the mainstream media, and I don't know if it's CBS, Market Watch, or who, but they say that 50% of the stock market was owned by index funds. That turns out to be a lie. Whether it's malicious or not doesn't matter. It's just proof of more crappy journalism. So the 2 other figures that came in, one was coming from the Michael Burry guy, was from 5 to 17% ownership of the total stock market capitalization of the market. Has gone from 5 to 17% index and ETF, which is also index investing. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's taking a trebling, more than a trebling. So there's case, there's numbers, there's an argument. The guys Ben and the Plain Bagel, they came up with, okay, well, it's more like 5% of the stock market capitalization is owned by ETFs and index funds. And then the Plain Bagel went even further. It says, okay, well, now there's this other thing called shadow funds, which I never heard of, but there's always a new thing out there. And that is where you have, quote, active managed funds where they're, quote, trying to beat the S&P 500 index. But the lion's share of their ownership is the S&P 500 index because they're weak cowards and they don't want to deviate too far away from the S&P 500. And so that is also index investing, even though they aren't officially designated as an index fund. Then they also went out to figure out, well, there's also foreign investors, foreign fund managers that also kind of do the same thing or just have the S&P 500 as part of their portfolio. That would be index investors. They just buy into the S&P 500. They don't buy the individual stocks. So 15%, okay. Has that changed? And like, okay, but it's still only 15%. Then it was Ben Felix who made the point that, all right, so there's ownership. But how much of that actually gets down to additional shares of the underlying stocks that compose the S&P 500 or any other index like that are actively being bought out? And what he found is a small percent of actual trading is done where it's like new funds are going to buy new underlying shares that compile the S&P 500 index to create index shares that people can buy. And most of the purchases and redemptions of index funds are done within the index shares, are done within the, they just swap it out. I don't have the time to go into the boring difference of details of how ETFs trade versus index funds at the end of the day and how that's all washed out in the back office trading. But when you sell a share of an S&P 500 index fund, they don't go and buy a requisite number of IBM and Google and this and that. They usually have an inventory of shares they've already created out of the S&P 500 underlying shares, and they just swap those out. So actually very little new money is getting into the underlying shares. It's all traded within the fund. None of it, well, not none of it, a minority of it makes it to the original shares that would then drive up the price. But there still is an argument. Well, okay, but there's been a consistent trickle. Maybe it's not the majority, but it's been a net positive inflow into having to go and purchase these underlying shares to create the shares of the index that then new investors, the net new investors, want to. But neither here nor there. So it looked like, okay, yeah, it doesn't look like that much new activity is actually hitting it. Yes, there's an increase in volume. It's been slowly increasing over the past 20 years. On the logical sense, you'd have, well, new money's got to end up somewhere. It's got to end up somewhere. And you'd say, all right, I know maybe not all of it is directly affecting the stock price, but over time, with trillions of dollars over time being flooded, yeah, there could still be an effect. In other words, I'm not going down one way or the other. So I decided to pull out my old tools, my old boring tools of value analysis. And as we're going to look at the PE ratio and the dividend yield, I want to say, okay, is this bearing out? Is this bearing out not in stock prices, but stock prices relative to earnings, relative to cash flow? And I know it's boring, and by now it's basic bitch, but this is how you tell if there's a bubble. Finance is not hard, guys. It's not hard. And as you're going to find out here, as I point out my third point, it's moot and obsolete. Not just because index investing has like retired the dude bros, but the government has made it so we don't have to worry about fundamental analysis. Ooh, discounted cash flow. That's a cute model you got there. That's as cute as a plus size model. That's as cute as a COVID model. Get that crap out of here. It's all obsolete. So I took a look at first I originally tried to look at the PE ratio of the S&P 500 and the Russell 2000. The reason I look at the Russell 2000 is that is the benchmark small market capitalization, small company index. And the problem with the PE ratio, I got it pulled up here. And this is where I had to do Google searching. This is the S&P. That is the Russell. No, that's the, where'd it go? I'll pull it up on my spreadsheet. So when you look at the PE ratio, the Russell 2000 is all over the place. And this is in part because a lot of the companies within the Russell 2000 don't make money. And do you want to average each individual PE ratio, or do you want to add up all the profits and then all the stock prices and then come up with all the PE ratios? Sometimes it went negative for whatever reason. In 2016, it went negative. It was up to 150. In 2015, it was down to what's the low? Well, 0, I guess, in 2016, when it's down to 38. And now the latest data on this data series has it at 47. It's all over the place. So this is a consistent. So what I want to do instead was if the PE ratio doesn't do it, where you take a look at earnings as the driver of profits or a driver of stock prices. Imagine that. But screw that. Am I right? Now he's like, well, okay, earnings is way too volatile. Let's look at dividends. Because ultimately and truly, that's all a stock generates is the dividends. You got, dude, bro, it made $3 per share. Yeah, but it only paid out 5 cents. Your dividend payout ratio is less than 2%. And then you invested it in some dumbass thing, and then the company went bankrupt. So, you never really generate. It's only dividends. That's all a stock generates is dividends. And then maybe a payout if it's ever bought up. So I went to look at dividends, and this is a little bit more stable. Let me pull up my notes. And the Russell 2000 is a little more volatile than the S&P 500. But going back to 2010, we're going to go back to 2010 because I think we had the big reset. Okay, the financial crisis, it hadn't recovered, but it was over. The worst of the damage was done. Kind of the reset buttons we're going to start. So we're not starting at the peak of the .com. We're not starting at the crash. We're going to start at the post-collapse of the financial crisis. We got 10 years data. So the S&P has pretty much remained consistently around a 1.8 dividend yield, 1.8%. So every year that stock pays out 1.8%. You invest $1,000, you get $18. Ooh, boy, let's all invest in equities because there's such a return there. And then the Russell 2000, which has been a little bit more volatile, has averaged around 1.3. Where it is today, it's at about 1.3. It got up to 2. Ooh, 2%. Ooh, dude, bro, you making your money? There's not a lot of money flooding the market. No, you can't even beat inflation with equities on cash flow. Wow, yeah, the stock price might go up. What's investing? I buy now and sell high for later. But the point is that if there was going to be a bubble in large cap, in index investing, it would have showed up here. The dividend yield would have gone down further as prices went up relative to dividends, and it hasn't relative to the small cap index, which is the Russell 2000. Both have remained relatively consistent. And so when we factor in that, we look at a price to cash flow ratio, whatever cash flow, in this case, dividends. I don't see a bubble forming relative to small cap stocks. Now, I think you're an effing idiot. 1.8%. But this is where we now introduce another concept where I think it's almost moot to talk about, well, is there an index bubble, or is small caps a better thing? Because here's the real reason. All right, you're not even beating inflation with this. And the reason why is money printer go burr. It has been within my lifetime, my professional lifetime even, where we have just decided, starting in about 2000 with the dot-com bubble, we're just going to print ourselves out of every financial crisis. Without going into a long, boring economics lesson, but we'll go through this one again because I've done it millions of times before. You guys got to understand is when money printer goes burr, the money has to go somewhere. And you could pay out a defense contractor. You could give it to a welfare queen. You can bail out students with it. No matter where it goes, it all ends up, it doesn't even get to the hands, oftentimes, of the defense contractor. It goes direct deposit where? Into the bank. All right. And if you don't know how the banking system works, banks make money by borrowing at 1% and lending out at another percent that's higher. And banks only lend on things that people can't pay cash for, or in some instances, they don't want to pay cash for. What are these things? Housing. Oh, wow. Housing recovered so quickly when money printer went burr. The stock market. Well, when corporations borrow money at 2%, and then they go buy back their shares, well, the stock prices go up. Stock options of corporate executives are now in the black. They could go ahead and make a lot of money. So they go and they flood the market. Last I checked, it was about $2 trillion in corporate buybacks. The housing market, I think many of, we borrow money. Oh, look how low the interest rates are. And then at the same time, the normie, conforming, inferior adults of America, whoa, housing is really expensive. Like, I wonder if the two have anything to do. You think 2.8% 30-year mortgages has something to do with a crappy Rambler going for $350,000? Money printer go burr. And among other things, the stock market. Cars too, tuition. Why is tuition so high? Stop lending trillions of dollars into the market. It'll go down. But then we're not supporting the students. Never mind. Just collapse. So this is what's happening here. And the money's got to go somewhere, guys. And it will go in the general asset classes that banks lend to, which is cars, student loans, although that's not there anymore. That's under the federal, but it subsidized through credit card lending, but I'm not going to go into that. Healthcare, because those are large bills and you borrow for that. But mainly housing, and then also through corporate buybacks, the stock market. Even if they're not doing corporate buybacks, they're just holding marketable securities where corporations have been. I think one time Apple had $50 billion in cash and marketable securities. That means stocks. They just park it there. Oh my God, the stock market went up. So this is cute. We could talk about what percent is owned by index investors and look at the cash flows, which 100%. I'm like, didn't Trump just print off $3 trillion because of the flu? Might that have a bigger, larger effect? And, you know, and before that, Obama increased the money supply by 350%. I'm talking the monetary base. And that's the big gorilla in the room. You guys are, well, there's a squirrel running loose in our room. I'm like, what about the 600-pound gorilla over here where money printer go burr? And so what this has done, and it's so sad, not only has index investing completely replaced financial professionals. I mean, you don't need them anymore. All right. But with the money printer going burr, there is no intellectual or professional or academic way to value stocks anymore. And this is that, what would we call it, a paradigm shift or a massive change that I've witnessed within my professional life. Beforehand, you would look at fundamentals. Beforehand, yes, net present value was the mathematically, philosophically way to accurately price stocks. Net present value of all future cash flows if you could estimate them. Now, you want to know how to predict the stock market? You ask, how much percent money did we print off more this year? 10%? Oh my gosh, I wonder if stocks will go up around 10%. Because forget earnings, forget dividend. Look at this crap. 1.3%, 1.8%. Oh boy, oh, the high rates of return of equity investing. You might as well go with bonds at this point. Why take on the risk? And so this is an interesting academic, philosophical, maybe even realistic discussion to have about index investing. But it's all masked by the trillions of dollars we print off, some of which inevitably finds its way into the stock market, rendering any kind of traditional or fundamental analysis moot. It really is sad. All of finance, which there's a lot of intellectually, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the math. I enjoyed the philosophy. It's like, what is the value of assets? How do you calculate? Oh, that's interesting. Throw it all away. Throw it all the F away. It's obsolete. It no longer matters. It's gee, brain, what are we going to do tonight? Same thing we do every day, Pinky. Print off another $1 trillion. Did this money supply up 15%? Hey, I bet your housing's going to go up 15%. Oh my gosh, I got such a low interest rate. Could you believe we had to pay $450,000? And then finally, to kind of put the nail on this one, I guess if I'm going to take a position, you could argue, and it is true because there is a sign of additional cash flows beyond what would have happened, that money is entering index investing more than it would have. By economic reality, that means it has to be driving up the prices more than it would have. But we're talking would have. And what I would like to ask is if this is a new normal with index investing, and I think it is. Because I think between the reputation Hollywood and the media has painted Wall Street, not to mention them getting bailed out. What? SNL, which I know wasn't necessarily Wall Street, but certainly the dot-com bubble. And they didn't necessarily get bailed out, but they were wrong. And then, well, you guys don't even remember long-term capital management. You guys bailed them out too. But especially the housing bubble collapsing. And now with robo-advised and index investing, people are saying, forget it. We don't need the professional active managers anymore. And what I think is that index investing is the new normal and it's not going to go away. Like it was the same thing. Like, okay, I was of the correct opinion, but ultimately proven wrong. And I'm like, well, all these 401ks and IRAs, when the government pays you through tax incentives to flood the stock market, and hey, we arbitrarily decided the stock market is where you're going to invest your retirement funds. Okay. And you all threw your money in there. Well, that's a permanent fixture now. It's in the law. And I thought Gen X wouldn't follow up. I thought the millennials wouldn't have the money, and they don't. But people are throwing their money into the stock market because, that's where we get the tax benefit from. And that's a new normal, further removing stock price performance and rates of return from the underlying cash flow and fundamental analysis or fundamental value of the stock. So just like that, this index investing, I think, is a permanent fixture now within. So because why would I hire some douchebag from Yale who's an idiot and just happen to have the right parents, who's been proven and his ilk have been proven to fail time and time and time again at beating the index? Forget it. Most people are They're lazy. You're lucky if you get people to invest for retirement, period. So when they're like, oh, I would just throw it in the index. And I think that's made it more accessible to most people. And they're not going to like go and research like Morningstar. They're not going to say, well, what's the beta? What's the Sharpe ratio? People are too lazy. Now you've just served up easy investing via index investing or robo-advisors. And I think you're not going to get over that laziness. And so I think it's a new normal that's here to stay. And thus we're going to have a new, much lower rates of return will be further removed from the underlying cash flow of or fundamental value of stocks. So that's it. There's my analysis. Thanks, Rob, making me do work. DJ Aftershow, I knew you'd be here, man. Dude, bro, like I'm going to totally make it on Wall Street with my MBA and my hedge fund, bro. We're going to beat the index and pay in equity. Let's get some wink. No. See, in Wall Street, so that's another thing. I'm kind of curious. Now with the disease floating around with the flu and everyone working from home, you know that there's no trading floor. Like the CME is gone. That's Chicago though. But like, is there even bars anymore people go to Wall Street, bro? Or like people like, nah, I'm working from home in Connecticut. And then over in Wall Street, you didn't go for wings. That's like too low class. You went for sushi or you went for martinis and Manhattans. That's, I don't know. It's so sad. At least Wall Street, at least in the 80s and 90s, I guess, like there was some panache. Now all the activity and excitement is focused on Silicon Valley, where you got computer programmers programming code, which is very boring. And then they go home and jerk off to porn. I don't see the excitement. Like, I don't see all the nerds going like, dude, bro, let's go get some guava juice. What do you do in San Jose? Oh, Mike Honcho for $5. Thanks, Mike. New guy here. I have all this damn money. I don't know what to do with it. Update on Cappy's poo fund. Well, let me tell you about Cappy's septic tank fund. Okay. It provides 0 rates of return. You will lose all your money, but you'll get the warm, fuzzy feelings that you helped Cappy take a poo. Okay. I got to get a septic tank fund, or I got to get a septic tank. So I've created a septic tank fund. You may donate here through Super Chats. You may also go to subscribestar.com/AaronClary, where I got the little meter. It shows you how much % of the funds raised. It's like 7,500. So unlike, could serve a thought on the internet or a fangirl only, like, hi guys, so I need money for a boob job and here's my wish list. I want a septic tank. Could Cappy got a poo? All right. So you can, thank you for your $5 though. Go to the septic tank fund. And I want to do something with it. Like, like have all the donors, like when you're hiking around in a park, you come up on a bench and everyone's got a little placard, all these old dead people that donated money to the local parks, and like Philbert and Phyllis Albertson, donators to Dakota County Parks. And that's their legacy. See, somewhere in the ground in Hermosa, South Dakota, you'll have your name on a septic tank as it's slowly eroding away and leaking feces into the underground water system. Isn't that nice? But I'll be dead by the time I have to worry about that. That it. Okay, just so you guys know, I will be on with Troy Francis in about an hour and 10 minutes. I retweeted it out. Look up Troy Francis and be on his YouTube today. And I gotta do another serious one here. But regardless, AsselConsulting.com, questions, answers. If you are interested in finance and investing, a couple of items. One, get Bachelor Pad Economics. I do talk about investing and retirement planning a little bit more detail here. That's only 1 or 2 chapters. There's other stuff involved there. Also, you guys don't know, it's coming up. Yeah, it's like over 12 years ago. I wrote my first book on the housing crisis, predicting it before it came out. So I was writing it for about, 9 months. And just to show you, I'm no dummy. I know you all think I'm just good looks and charm, but there's some brilliance here too. Like almost 8 months before the crash, I started writing the book. My book was published the day Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. So I was way ahead. I remember having to update all my charts because everything I predicted was coming true. So if you want to get that book, it's called Behind the Housing Crash. Frankly, personal bias set aside, better stories than The Big Short. Big Short was great. It was brilliant, but it focused on 3 different people and on the top-down finance. So this is what was happening on the top. If you want to see what it was like on the bottom, where the banks were making the loans and all the shady deals that the real estate developers go get behind the housing crash. It's my first book. Wrote it when I was very young. Back when Cappy did a lot of research. All right, we'll see you guys later. Toodles.